Well, hi there. Been a minute. My name is Chris. This is Breads and Fishes. It's been a while. But you can thank my wife for urging me to get the channel up and running again. Now, as you can see from the title, we're talking about the concept of changing one's mind. This is it's a fascinating and ancient theological question, but one with a pretty simple and beautiful answer. Before we get too far into it, we need to define what it even means to change your mind. So here's what I mean when I say changing one's mind. Changing your mind, say, like about your beliefs, means that you genuinely believe one thing, but then after some reflection or some new evidence or something else unforeseen, you change that belief and genuinely believe something else that contradicts your previously held belief. So you switch out one belief for a new one. So that'd be one way of changing your mind. Changing your mind about your intentions is slightly different. Let's say that you intend to do A, but then you change your intention to do not A. Either you're deciding to do something other than A, or to do nothing. So it would be kind of like if I am reaching for a doorknob. I'm intending to open the door. In my head, I intend to open the door. I hear a strange sound from inside the doorway, so I stop and I withdraw my hand and I think, oh, never mind. I'm not doing that. I don't want to open this door. Maybe I heard a scream. Maybe I heard a really loud, seemingly dangerous sound, like a gunshot. I'm reaching for the door. I'm intending to open the door, and then something happens inside the room, and I go, oh, never mind. I'm not opening this door anymore. So that would be changing your mind in terms of your intentions. So what's the Hebrew term for this kind of thing? If the Old Testament is talking about someone changing his mind, what word is this? And let's see if this term is applicable to God or not. So the term here is Naham. This is Strong's H5162. It's a term that Yahweh uses, for example, in Exodus 13:17. Yahweh here says that he doesn't want to take them through the land of the Philistines, because if Israel encounters the Philistines that early on, then they might change their minds about going to the promised land. So Naham is it refers to more than just what we would call changing your mind. But that's the general gist of it is an internal change. Changing your mind is the usual sense of this term. We also see the term in Numbers chapter 23, verse 19, when the Gentile prophet Balaam or Balaam says, God is not a man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should, Naham, not a son of man that he should change his mind. But perhaps most famously, we find it in 1 Samuel chapter 15. I brought my Bible out here. I got to use it for something. (15:29). Samuel says this: the glory of Israel will not lie or Naham, because he is not a man that he should have Naham. Or that he should Naham. So it says the glory of Israel will not lie or change his mind. He is not a man that he should change his mind. Now, depending on your translation, it may say change his mind or it may say regret. I understand why the ESV in particular would be uncomfortable with God changing his mind. So here Samuel says God is not a man that he should Naham, that he should change his mind. So we've already seen the term Naham means a changing of the mind. It means changing your mind. We've seen some passages that actually say God doesn't do this, but it's more complicated than that. First, we talked about defining what it is to change your mind. And God actually talks about doing that very thing in Jeremiah chapter 18. While I'm turning, I will talk about something so we don't have dead air. You may know me from Twitter, or X as it's now known. Breads and Fishes over there. Fun fact, the channel came first, and then I made the X account to promote the channel, not the other way around. So here's what Yahweh says. He's talking about a wicked nation changing its behavior, its conduct, or a righteous nation changing its conduct to be wicked. If at any time I declare concerning a nation or a kingdom that I will pluck up and break down and destroy it, and if that nation concerning which I have spoken turns from its evil, then I will Naham of the disaster I intended to do to it. It says relent in the ESV. I can't remember. I'll confirm in the edit if that's Naham. I'm not sure that I... Nope, it's not in my notes. So we'll find out how close I was just now, if I was completely off. And he talks about the good nation turning evil, and he says, in that case, I will relent of the good that I had intended to do to it. So it seems to fit what we were talking about with changing your mind as a concept, whether or not Naham appears in the passage. But second, we have, interestingly, 1 Samuel chapter 15. Shouldn't have closed it. Shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that. Okay, so 1 Samuel 15. So we do have Samuel, the prophet, in the dialogue saying God does not change his mind. Or that God will not change his mind, rather. But before this, so Yahweh sends Shaul, King Saul. He sends him to go fight against the Amalekites, and he tells him, don't spare anyone. Shaul disobeys a direct order. He keeps some of the living things alive, including the king. So the word of Yahweh came to Shemuel. The word of Yahweh came to Samuel. I, Naham, that I have made Saul king, because he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. So Yahweh himself comes to Samuel and says, I, Naham, that I have made Saul king. In other words, I've changed my mind about making Saul king. Then we go to closer to the end of the chapter. It's actually the last sentence in the chapter. And the author summarizes the whole chapter when he says, and Yahweh Nahamed about making Saul king over Israel. So we do have that quote from Samuel in this chapter saying Yahweh does not change his mind. But we also see from Yahweh's own mouth at the beginning of the chapter that he Nahamed. Samuel says Yahweh is not a man that he should Naham. And then the author, the Spirit-inspired author at the end of the chapter says, and Yahweh Nahamed. So if anyone's going to be wrong in this chapter, it's not going to be Yahweh and it's not going to be the Spirit inspiring the author. It has to be Samuel. But I don't think Samuel's wrong. We're going to get back to that, about how to reconcile these. But first, let's look at one more. My personal favorite instance of Yahweh Nahaming is in the prophet Jonah. Jonah, Micah, Nahum. Yes, I used the song, okay. Jonah chapter 3. Okay, so we all know the story. God goes to Jonah and says, go to Nineveh. Jonah says no, and he goes off in the ship. Yahweh sends a storm. Jonah gets thrown overboard. He gets swallowed by the giant sea creature. Giant sea creature spits him out. He goes and preaches to Nineveh. And the people there repent, and then here's what we get. When God saw what they did, the inhabitants of Nineveh, when God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil way, God Nahamed regarding the disaster he said he would do to them, and he did not do it. So God changed his mind. But let's go a little farther. But this displeased Jonah exceedingly. This displeased Jonah exceedingly. And he was angry. And he prayed to Yahweh and said, "O Yahweh, is this not what I said while I was still in my own country? That is why I hasted to flee to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious and merciful God, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and nahaming from disaster." Relenting from disaster, Naham. So God, okay, there is a concept in Hebrew literature called double mention. I realize that if you're watching this channel, you probably know this already, but on the off chance that some of you don't, there's something called a double mention. In Hebrew literature, especially in the Old Testament, if something gets mentioned twice in fairly rapid succession, that's the author telling you that this is a very, 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 very important concept in the passage. They didn't have exclamation points. So what they did when they wanted to put an exclamation point on a concept was they would say it twice. And you know that if it gets said 3 times, that's major. Okay, so right here, at the end of chapter 3, the last thing we hear is that Yahweh Nahamed. And the first thing we hear about in chapter 4 is Yahweh Naham from the mouth of Jonah. So this is mentioning twice in rapid succession. So the author is trying to tell us this is extremely important, that we know that Yahweh is a merciful and gracious God who nahams from disaster. All right. Of course, I would encourage you to do a full word study on the Hebrew term Naham. You'll find the Old Testament throws this word around a lot about Yahweh. You'll even find it in the Psalms, talking about how Yahweh Nahams all over the place. So he does, in fact, change his mind, according to this term. And I'm not sure what to conclude from these narratives, except that Yahweh did, in fact, Naham, that he did, in fact, change his mind. Now, here's the thing. If the text says multiple times in narratives and from Yahweh's own mouth that he routinely nahams, that he routinely changes his mind, then what are we going to do about Numbers 23 with Balaam, and what are we going to do about Samuel in 1 Samuel 15? It's very interesting that in both places, hard and fast decrees of God are being challenged by Yahweh's enemies. In Numbers, the pagans are challenging God's promise to Abraham that his descendants will live in the land. No, you won't. This is our land. And Yahweh says, no, I'm not changing my mind. Balaam rather says, Yahweh is not changing his mind. Why would he change his mind about his promise to his people? This is not negotiable. This isn't up for discussion. It's not up for debate. Yahweh will not change his mind about this one. Then in Samuel, same thing. It's a hard and fast decree by God. What, you think you can just fall on your knees and change God's mind about him making you not king anymore? Don't you know how seriously he takes this? God's not a man that you can just so flippantly flop him back and forth with his decisions. Okay, you don't just get to cry and say, no, but I want to be king. I'm sorry. And then you get to be king again. No, that's not some human being. You can just flip-flop back and forth like that. And so it's in these contexts of struggling against God's decrees that it's said that God will not change his mind, because his mind is already steadfastly made up about these issues. These particular intentions are not up for discussion or negotiation. So I hope you found this video helpful and thought-provoking. I hope you'll go out and study the issue for yourself. I have some expansions of this concept coming up in my content very soon, talking about the implications of this for the nature of time and et cetera, and like, can we really trust a God who changes his mind? Things like that. We're going to get into those implications in future videos. For now, go out and serve God and love people. Love people and love God. Love God and love people. Something like that. I got to make an outro one of these days, but something like that. May God bless and keep you. Go love God and love people. Sei un